All right. This is Tiffany Ablola. I'm an EOS implementer, former attorney, and we are going to do part two today of talking about the vision, traction organizer, and strategic planning in the firm environment.
I'm Jen Hamilton. I'm a fractional integrator and former CPA, and so excited to dig in deeper. Now we're going to get into some really good nitty gritty of the parts that I like, making things happen.
Okay, so we left off around the 3-year picture last time. We hit on core values, core focus, 10-year target, which doesn't really have to be 10 years. It's your big, hairy, audacious goal. And so 3-year picture is once you have your big, hairy, audacious goal of where your firm is going, how do we get that level of specificity so that we know what we're doing in the next 3 years to make progress towards that 10-year target? Sometimes, I think I mentioned last time that there's a big transition in ownership happening. I've seen that a lot lately in the firm environment where founding partners are they're ready to transition out into owner's box or completely sell it and get out or have the firm be acquired. And so the 10-year and 3-year may connect on that front, or it just really depends on what the timing is and what your goals are there. Curious to hear what you've encountered on that front, Jen, as far as this transitionary period.
It's a big deal right now, too. And I think that the important pieces, some of the things that we had said before, when you're looking at transition, you want to make sure that the people that you have to transition to, if it's looking at someone maybe that's in-house or even someone that's outside looking to merge or however that might look, is that there's still that alignment around the core values and the focus, some of the things we had said before, but they have similar goals as well. They see a similar 3-year picture. They see like that big, hairy, audacious goal. They work on similar folks. So it's still super critical to make sure that this idea, the why, the what, the who, and the where you're going for your firm align as you look at that transition. And these are the pieces that make this so much easier to be able to see this is your strategic plan no matter who's at the helm.
Yes. And if you don't have buy-in on that from the side of the outgoing partnership and the incoming, it's going to make it so much more difficult to see eye to eye. And you're going to have to get through that conversation at some point. And to be honest, some people aren't going to want to take it over and put it into the same direction. Oftentimes, I'll see teams start up EOS and say, we just acquired this firm from the managing partner. This is our new direction. So it can happen both ways, but it would be really nice to align the vision, outgoing and incoming, ideally. And so this 3-year picture, you start to see a little bit more detail, but it's still meant to be high level. You got a future date, revenue, profit, measurables, high level measurables of what matters to you as a firm. It might be incoming or closed cases per year, or an additional office being opened, which goes more down to what it looks like below. Oftentimes there's key hires that need to be brought in. But that 3-year picture, I see a lot of firms and teams struggle with it because they, at a baseline, already don't know what's happening this next year. So it's hard for them to really grasp what is going to happen 3 years from now. What about you, Jen?
Yeah, that's why I think that if you think linearly in terms of what's going to happen next year, then figure that out for the second year and the third year, it's not the best way to do it. It's much better to work backwards from the BHAG, from that big, hairy, audacious goal, from where you want to go and then long term, and then figure out what would it look like in 3 years to get there. And then what I find is then it's much more powerful to start with that 3-year picture when you're building out the 1 year. So in other words, don't work forwards, work backwards.
Yes, that's exactly why the sequence is the way it is. And some teams, it's not always going to solidify immediately what their BHAG is or their 10-year target. And so those are the teams that I see struggling in the 3-year picture because they're not 100% bought in on where they're going long term. So then they're almost making it up as they go at the 3-year picture. But that's that's just the reality of it. Some teams are really blessed with a clear vision, and then you just keep revisiting it until something clarifies itself. But ideally, yeah, if you have that 10-year target and you know, oh, this is what we're going towards, getting to the 3-year is going to be a whole lot easier. Then you start to clarify the 1-year plan and the quarterly rocks. So I see a lot of people getting stuck in that because they just want to talk about the short term and say, well, we're all here. We can agree on the short term. And they kind of discount the 10-year target. And so I just don't want people to discount that aspect because it seems so pie in the sky. Like, I don't even know if I'll be here in 10 years. But this is a point. We need something bigger than ourselves as a firm to move towards.
That's really, really well said. I like that. Having, ideally, the firm is still here. Whether you're here or not, you want to have the direction of the firm.
The next piece of it is the marketing strategy. And this one is not meant to be an all-encompassing marketing strategy. It's the bare minimum of what everyone in the firm needs to be on the same page about. Who is your core client, your target market? What makes you unique as a firm? And those 3 uniques define you and ideally would not define another firm that does the same thing. Some teams have a proven process and a guarantee, and it's great if you have that in the professional services environment because it lends a lot of credibility to you've thought through what you do. You can illustrate it and share that with the world. And if you have some sort of a guarantee, it makes the decision for the client just that much easier to work with you. And in the guarantee, some of my professional services teams say, like, we don't want to guarantee money back. That just doesn't make sense at any point in the process. But that's not the only option. It could be that we guarantee that you're happy with this deliverable, as in you get to a certain stage in the process where you have to, as a client, approve something. So let's say it's an architectural or design type company. You get to a place where a client is fundamentally dissatisfied with the plan, the drawings, or whatever you are proposing for them to move forward with before they spend millions or tens of millions of dollars. They got to be happy with that. So I've had teams say, we'll guarantee you'll love this aspect of it because it doesn't serve anybody if that guarantee isn't fulfilled. What have you seen, Jen?
Yeah, I'm thinking too about, and one of my law firm clients, they're really committed to caring for not just their client, but the whole client's family just because of the work that they do. And so it's more guaranteeing that we're going to come looking holistically at the impact on the whole family, not just the client. And so that it's just almost ensuring a way that you're going to serve. And one of the things that I think about with a guarantee when you're trying to figure it out, you're right, it doesn't have to be monetary. It could be that, we'll continue to perform until you're satisfied, we'll take it to the end. But you could also look at it as an opportunity to be really clear about what you need from the client so that we are going to be able to do this if you're going to be able to do this, and create that partnership. So that guarantee doesn't have to be unconditional. It can be based on you show up, you get us the things on time, and we can guarantee we'll get you to the end on your deadline. And so the other thing I would say too around a guarantee is that to think of it as a way to deal with objections. So remember, this is under the marketing strategy umbrella. And if you think about what are the common hesitations or misconceptions maybe about a law firm or an accounting firm or any sort of services that you provide, if you can write that into your guarantee, how you're not that, it is about marketing that, sharing that, putting that out there in the world, and it gives you a better chance to close that client.
Yes, that's a really good one. Depending on the practice area, certain fees can be a concern for potential clients. I've seen teams incorporate that into a version of a guarantee. And then the way you show up in client service can also be a certain type of a guarantee. There's a lot of opportunity to be creative here, which is what I like about it. And same thing with the proven process. You can get as fancy as you like or as simple.
People get a little too in the weeds of how we're going to do it. And so what I like about the proven process is just a high level. What are the key areas or the key steps you'll take them through. And at a, like you said, Tiffany, at a very, very high level, what I like to say is that people just want to know you have a process that's proven. They don't need all the details.
Yes, it just helps you look like you got it together. That goes a long ways. So I remember one of our conversations, like in the professional services world, there's sometimes a low bar in how services are delivered. Just to have an experience that is well thought out, predictable, and shows that you have taken the time to think about the client experience and convey it to them goes a really long way. So we'll next go to the 1 year plan. So once you have your 3 year picture built out, then we're going to bring it down another notch to 1 year out. Oftentimes, firms will have lots of goals for the year, and they'll bring different. So this is a part where sometimes it can get tricky if you have many practice areas, many departments, and that's another conversation. But there's something called departmental plans that you could roll out into your organization at a later date, that they would cascade just the first page of this out, and then you can have those departments. Let's say it's a law firm with multiple practice areas. The practice areas can set their 1 year goal in a way that takes the context of the larger firm in mind. And then they would have this second page to propose as their plan and marching orders. But what I love about this is that it's, again, very straightforward. What are the goals for the year? What do we have to get done for the sake of the firm in the next year? And it's getting all of the leadership bought in on that. You need to lock it in at a certain point so that things can move forward. And limiting yourself to 1 to 7 items can sometimes be hard, because I curious to see what you've seen, Jen, but a lot of teams, we got this. We can do 10, we can do more. But if everything's important, nothing's important. And you need to look at that 3 year picture and all the other things on the first page to help you really say, what do we have to do this year to move forward in our bigger picture?
Yeah, this is the hard part, right? It's like trying to say which one is my favorite kid. You know, when it comes to goals and things, people do not like to choose, but the real power is in the focus and prioritizing by strategically what does your firm need? As the leadership team, you need to choose what things will move the needle the most for the firm. Again, going back to what's going to get us to those 3 year, what's going to get us to the big, hairy, audacious goal. But you have to be disciplined about being able to say no to what's not going to get there. And sometimes it's like saying no to some of your pet projects or some of the things that you would like want to. So I had a client that did services. Actually, they do services for law firms. And one of the things is that they wanted to expand from just working in law firms into other industries. And I said, until we get your client experience shored up and that team to be the right people in the right seat, I'm not going to let you expand. As much as that sounds shiny and wonderful and exciting, and I know you've got a lot of opportunities and new connections, but until we know we can really serve who we're already serving, so our 1 year goal, and it's for 2024, is to get the right people in the right seats in that team, because that team was a keystone to all of their other success.
Yeah, that's a great example of being able to connect what you need to do in the shorter term to possibly expand into that bigger picture. You don't want to grow too fast, because then your client experience would possibly suffer, and then you would be juggling too much in order to fix something. Nobody wants to be in that position. Another aspect of, because as we get to the more detailed pieces of the strategic planning in the shorter term, I start to see a problem pop up in firm environments, which is capacity. Like, people are smart, right? And oftentimes at leadership team, people are very capable, they're hardworking. They'll say, like, I can do this. And it's just not having realistic expectations or being able to predict well what they can get done, especially in these firm environments. And if you're on leadership team, oftentimes your high level partner, long-term partner with a lot of billables hours that you're working in client service, if you're taking on goals in the 1-year plan and you're feeling strongly about it, this is where you start to talk about, okay, is this doable? Do we have the structure that we'll talk about in another video, but do we have the structure to make this happen, the people with the capacity to make it happen? Because we're not assigning it to anyone yet, but it's going to be a real conversation once we get to the rocks. But yeah, that's where you can start to chew off more and get in trouble.
Yeah, I think that this is a perfect transition to the rocks because it starts to be able to think about, okay, that's our goal in our 1-year plan. How are we going to get it done? Maybe Tiffany, you can share a little bit more about rocks, then we can give some good examples.
Yeah. So each industry, each practice area has, oftentimes I've found, a different calendar. Some times of year are crazy and some are better than others. And then you just have up and down cycles in general with what life throws at you. One of the main skills that you're learning as a leadership team is predicting. And then part of predicting is predicting what you can do in a given amount of time with your resources available. And a lot of firms right now are strapped on resources, as in like talent, to get things done. So we have to really become great predictors at what we can do when. And so we're talking about 90 days here for rocks, and that goes by very quickly. 3 months, right? And if you're talking this time of year, it feels like much less than that because we got holidays. So the rocks, and what I've seen firms struggle with in this, is that maybe they're not used to project management. You really got to find somebody, even if they're outside the industry, to help you with that. Because if you don't have someone who knows how to project manage well, things aren't going to get done. And then to Jen's expertise, you need a really strong integrator to make these rocks a reality, because you set out what it is, but there's no more lines there. It's not going to tell you what to do first, second, and third. And so you have someone who's accountable. When are they going to do that? Between their client calls, client work, court appearances, the billable hours, the administrative work that comes with the billable hours, and then business development for a lot of partners who are on leadership team. This really requires like a really strong project management presence. And if you don't have that, just like having a really realistic perspective on what you can get done. And a lot of it is, it's a muscle you exercise and you get better at as you go through this process. But what are some tips that or suggestions you have for firms working through rocks, Jen?
I think that the thing that is really important, you mentioned this, to be specific about it, have them be in a SMART goal format. Even though these are projects, the SMART format of specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound actually is one of my favorite things to do to check a rock before I let them be approved, if you will. And having that conversation, especially as you keep saying, is this realistic? Is this achievable? Can we get it done in this time frame? And so some of the things that by those conversations we made adjustments for is we look at, okay, maybe this is a multi-quarter rock. And so what is realistic in this quarter? So it still can keep moving on and we can do phase 2 in the next quarter. So that can also help being really clear when you are the leader that's responsible for this rock, that you get buy-in from your team to make sure that they are on board too, because they're going to play a role in it. So that can also make or break a rock, is to be able to do that. And then the other piece, which we will talk about on another video, is the importance of having constant group accountability. And so that's part of why it's under the word traction, is that you got to keep checking in to see, are we on track? Are we not? How's it going? And that, to me, that's one of the biggest ways that you're going to get more ability to get to your 1-year goal, is that when you continue to move these rocks forward by looking at them ongoingly. Where I find people make mistakes is that they don't really look to see, is this going to get done by the end, until maybe 2 weeks before the end of the quarter. So it's super important to have that accountability and safe space to check in with the team to say, no, we're stuck, we need some help, and bring it up as an issue, which we'll talk about next, so that the team can actually move things forward. I always say it's so much better to know as early as possible than wait till the end to find out it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's all about the check in, like you said, having the opportunity to update on the status and having the accountability of needing to work on it so that you can report back on the check in is really helpful. And even though there's one person on this and it's probably a partner, we know you're not the only one who's going to be working on it oftentimes, and so it's got to be a team effort. So if it's not written in a way that's smart, and if it's not an actual priority, you're going to have some problems here. So I've had teams say, well, I mean, I kind of knew that wasn't going to happen this quarter. I just put it on there. And so that's part of the process of prioritizing and how you learn to prioritize. And of course, like the idea is not necessarily just to make rocks so that you finish them all 100% every single time. It's to do something that's a bit of a stretch and be challenging for you as a leadership team, as a firm. But yeah, there's a fine line between reaching too far and then falling flat and like taking on way too much there with rocks. The next question on the VTO, and what I think is great for firms, is having a long-term issues list. There's a different version of it that we can talk about later on a weekly meeting. But let's say you have a leadership team and they all happen to be partners, but there's other partners in the firm as well. Some of you may be wondering, how do we talk about stuff? So the good news is there's ways for you to figure out the venue, the appropriate venue to have certain issues come before, let's say, all equity partners versus, the people who are on the leadership team. So this gets you thinking about what are our long-term issues that need visibility for the rest of the firm, and for people to know we're thinking about it. We don't have the solve right now, but it is at the forefront of our minds. Let's say you have a massive parking situation. We can't solve it this quarter. We're thinking about it. Or we potentially want to go into another service area, like Jen's earlier example. Maybe we shouldn't do that right now, but I think we want to keep it on there to let everyone know we are open to exploring it, just not this quarter. And below, how we work through these issues is to identify the root cause, discuss it, not over discuss it, and then take a stab at solving it. And sometimes it doesn't result in a solve forever, but it's at least the first step towards solving it. What do you want to share about firms and long-term issues, Jen?
I think that we keep bringing up this idea of succession planning, and sometimes this is the biggest problem, is that you keep putting it off and keep putting it off. So I would just challenge yourself, if you see that you keep saying, oh, next time that we're going to deal with the succession issues, make that something that you decide really, when are we going to do it, because there are a lot of pieces. It's not a quick fix. It's not a one quarter and done type of thing. So that's an area where I've been working with some of my clients who do have succession as part of their future, is looking at what pieces do we need to get done. And some of those are process documentation. Some of them are doing some shadowing and getting someone to be a part of new decision makings and meetings. And so I think it's important to not just, like what Tiffany is saying, have everyone be very, very clear that these are things going to be checked, but see how long they have been on there. If they keep coming back on here, is it time to finally deal with it? Because it's nice to be able to say and agree, this is not for now. But if you keep putting it off, when are you going to get to it?
Yeah, 100%. If it's an issue, an obstacle, idea, or potential problem that is showing up, then it might be time to ask yourselves the question, are we purposely avoiding this for some reason? And something like succession planning is a huge lift. It takes years, and you probably are going to have to bring in several experts to help your firm with it. They are difficult to solve, but if you start to take the first step and just at least do the IDS on it, you'll move it forward at least bit by bit, because before you know it, a couple of years will pass and maybe that person with all of the historical information in the firm decides to retire and there are no processes there and that person's gone. That can just be one aspect of it. There are many more potential outcomes to not dealing with this as well. So that wraps up the issues list for the VTO and things that we've seen firms struggle with. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.